Hello. Today we're going to be talking all about the ISO 15288 standard, and my name is Ratnisha McLeod. We're going to be covering some background of the ISO standard, the definition. We're also going to look at some history about it, some data that's needed to know when it comes to utilizing it, and how we can utilize it, applications of the ISO 15288. We're going to be discussing the relationship it has to systems engineering. We're going to be looking at some of the future work that it has going on. And then we're going to conclude and summarize and look at some of our references. So here's a little background about this standard. ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization. ISO was established in Geneva, Switzerland in 1947 and comprised of more than 160 national standard bodies from the Worldwide Federation of National Standards Bodies. The NSB for the United States is the American National Standard Institution, or ANSI. Here's a definition given to us by standards.ieee.org. The ISO 15288 is defined as the international standard established. This international standard establishes a common process framework for describing the life cycle of man-made systems. It defines a set of processes and associated terminology for the full life cycle, including conception, development, production, utilization, support, and retirement. This standard also supports the definition, control, assessment, and improvement of these processes. These processes can be applied concurrently, iteratively, and recursively to a system and its elements throughout the life cycle of a system. So we should be able to use this standard on and gain processes that we can use repeatedly on any kind of complex system. Here's a little bit of history about the development of this standard. The original need for standards in the systems engineering process started in 1994. So this is where the planning for the standard started. The first version of this standard was published in 2002, edited by Stuart Arnold and architected by Harold Lawson. In 2004, this standard became standard for the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers and officially became the ISO 15288. The standard was updated in 2008 and a final time in 2015. Also in 2008, this standard started to be in sync with the ISO IEC 12207, where the process models are identical. The ISO IEC 12207 is the standard for software lifecycle processes. So after 2008, they harmonized, and now the development for processes for software and hardware and technical systems, they have to follow the same standards as the ISO 15288. Here's a little data. The ISO 15288 develops a set of guidelines for processes that can be applied at any time during the life cycle of the system. The process is manage, control, improve, and perform at each stage of the system. According to ISO.org, the ISO 15288 is a particular standard specifically for systems that may include hardware, software, data, humans, processes, facilities, and materials. The applications of ISO 15288. So the ISO 15288 standard is applied in many of the processes used throughout a company or throughout a specific life cycle. At the time of acquiring a product, it should be verified that the product follows the ISO 15288 standard. This standard can also be a part of the supply process, the project planning process, the risk management process, and many more. Here's a simplified guideline for the technical processes that follow the ISO 15288 standard. The relationship to systems engineering in regards to the ISO 15288, it's quite simple, as systems engineering is a discipline within the field of engineering where the focus is design and management of complex systems. The ISO 15288 is used in creating the framework for the process and life cycle of these same complex systems. So they work hand in hand. The life cycle processes from the ISO 15288 standard are also needed to develop systems engineering V models. A V model system design is the design used by the Department of Defense for complex systems. This design helps draw solutions to satisfy stakeholder requirements. This system also ensures that the verification and validation steps are done properly and in the right order, of course. In this design, complex systems are meant to be able to process repeatedly as needed. So here's a little bit of the future work. Um, the ISO 15288 is to be reviewed every 5 years. The last time it was reviewed was in 2020, so the next review will be scheduled for 2025. And the official name for the ISO 15288 is the ISO IEC IEEE 15288 2015. And it is expected to be replaced by the ISO IEC IEEE FDIC 15288, as this is currently under development. So there's no exact date for it, but we are looking to replace this standard with a updated one soon. So in conclusion, the ISO 15288 standard is an important piece to the systems engineering and should be used in all aspects of a corporation, life cycle, or system. Identical standards are used for processes involving software and in the software engineering segment of the engineering department. V model system designs are developed by following the ISO 15288 standard. This standard is periodically reviewed and soon to be replaced by an updated version. So, today we covered a lot about the ISO 15288. We looked at a little bit of the background of it, who developed it, where the standard comes from, the definition or one of the definitions for the ISO 15288 standard, a little bit of history, a little bit of future, looked at the data we need in order to be able to utilize this standard, the applications of this standard, how do we utilize it throughout the corporation, how do we utilize it at the supply level, how do we apply it to our complex systems, and which systems do we apply it to. We also looked at how it's related to systems engineering and we learned that it is a huge part of systems engineering. We talked about the systems design that the Department of Defense uses and how that's connected to the ISO 15288. Thank you for listening.